Welcome everybody. Today's lesson is on trigonometry. Alright, basically trigonometry is a study of the trigonometric functions, and we're going to look at those in the second video here. But in the first video, we're just going to look at right triangles, and we're going to identify all the important parts of a right triangle. And then after we do that, we're going to look at some Pythagorean theorem problems. So let's jump right in. So if I'm looking at a right triangle, though it makes a right triangle is this angle right down here. So we all know that a triangle has three sides, right? And that also means that it has three angles, all right? So a right triangle is a right triangle if it has a 90-degree angle as one of its three angles, and we see that right down there. And we designate that with our nice little box there in the corner. And the other two angles in our right triangle are just kind of our leftovers there. But one of the cool things that we always know about triangles is that all of the angles add up to 180 degrees. And degrees is just a way that we measure an angle and how wide an angle is. So a 90-degree angle is where the two sides are perfectly perpendicular, and then anything else, right, in this triangle is going to automatically have to be less than 90 degrees. So why does that happen? Well, if they have to add up to 180, then that means that the two angles, if this one is 90 degrees, then the other two angles have to add up to 90 degrees as well. So they have to add up to 90 degrees. That means, if you have ever been in geometry class, that those angles are what we call complementary angles. Alright, so they add up to 90 degrees. And we can use that if we're ever solving for an angle if we're given another angle. But we're going to save the angle thing for a little bit because that deals with the trigonometric functions, and we're going to do that in the second video. So we've all seen the Pythagorean theorem before. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A, b, and c are all sides of a triangle, and it's really important that you always put them in the correct spots. Alright? C is the number one, most important one. This is what we call the hypotenuse. Alright? And we know that A and B from the previous slide, those are what we call legs. Alright? So these are our legs. And we always want to label them the same way here. When I see a triangle like this, I always label B down here at the bottom because it's kind of like what we might call the base of that triangle, right? And that leaves side A over here as our third side. So what the Pythagorean theorem says basically is that if I square side A and add that to the square of side B, then I will get the same square of side C, which is really rad. So that means if I have two out of my three sides of a triangle, I can always solve for the third side using my Pythagorean theorem. So let's quickly look at a couple examples. Whenever you're doing these, you do have to draw a picture. So I'm going to start by drawing my right triangle for my first example. In this case, side A is 3, side B is 4, and then we're going to look for side C. So remember, this is side A. Alright, I'm going to label it A equals 3. This is side B, that's 4. Notice that my picture is not really accurate, like the base here doesn't look longer than the leg. Guess what? It doesn't matter, right? As long as I write that number next to it, that means it is that long. And so that means I want to know what is C. So the equation that I'm going to use here is my Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? I'm going to go ahead and substitute my values. Alright, and we've solved so many problems at this point, so this should be pretty good. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, that gives us 25 over here on the left side, and then if I root that, then I'm going to get c is equal to 5. Now, it would technically be plus or minus 5, but this is the side of a triangle, and sides can't be negative, so we can drop the negative one. So c is just equal to 5 here. So this is when we're solving for the hypotenuse side of a triangle. We can also solve for one of the legs of our triangle. Alright, so here's our second example. A, B, and C. Here we have A is equal to 6, B is our unknown, and C is equal to 9. All right. Now as I look at this one and I go to plug everything in, I'm going to notice that this time my unknown is on the left side of my equation there. So when I go to plug everything in, 6 squared plus b squared equals 9 squared, right? And then I go to actually solve this thing right here. So 6 squared is 36 plus b squared equals 81. Then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to subtract that 36 there. That's going to give me 45. So b squared is 45. And then I'm going to root that to get my answer for b. Now, if you were over in like pre-calc or geometry or something else, you might actually give this as a radical, but we're not going to do that. We're going to take the square root and get our decimal answer. So this one comes out to 6.71 for side B. And so that is our Pythagorean theorem. Pretty simple stuff, right? It takes a little bit of practice, so you have a practice worksheet. Go ahead and do that now.